Hare Krishna, my name is Jvalamukhi and I was born in the ISKCON movement in 1976. I took initiation from someone in 1998 when I was 18 years old, and that person is no longer in good standing in ISKCON, so I wanted to accept reinitiation from Radhanath Swami, and I asked him to accept me in the year 2000. He was very gracious to me, I remember, and I felt completely won over by him. I considered him my everything at that time. He was my spiritual master. He was someone who'd offered me really a great amount of kindness. He made me feel very special, like I really meant something to him, which I hadn't felt before with anyone else in an authority position like that. And all in all, I was really very, very grateful that Krishna had sent someone like that in my life to bring me closer to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So many years passed. I was still aspiring for him. I'd had children at that time and wasn't able to keep up with my vows as much as I wanted to with the rounds and things. So I never took formal initiation from him, but in my heart I was always aspiring for him. And then in the year 2010, I had said a very powerful purify me prayer because of all of the things that I saw going on in our society, especially related to marriage and social things. And Krishna responded with a lot of purification, which essentially looked like total meltdown in my life. I went through a physical breakdown, an emotional breakdown, a spiritual huge questioning period. There were 2 times, I'm not proud to say, but I came very close to ending my life because of the challenges that were pushing so hard. It took pretty much everything I had not to do that. One of the things that was very challenging for me was what was coming up for me was the reality that everything that I thought that I knew, that was bona fide, that was, a place of shelter, was being taken away from me by what was coming up for me. And the more that I spoke to peers and was just in honesty with my own healing process, I saw that things weren't right. And one day someone sent me a link to watch a video, and it was Bhavananda sitting on the Vyasasan in Chowpatty, giving a class to hundreds of people. And seeing him for the first time since I was a child on that video screen sent such a knife through me that I literally fell to the ground and just started screaming, crying. It was so violent of a reaction. After that, I composed a letter to Radhanath Swami and asked him to please never allow that person to address his congregation because they wouldn't be safe. They would trust him because Radhanath Swami said he's trustworthy, that he gave him the position to sit on the Vyasasan. And I very humbly and diplomatically asked him to please avoid associating with him because of what he had done to me. To respect that, I told him what he had done. I had the letter hand-delivered to him so that I know he'd read it, and I never got a response. About a year later, I came to a place of understanding of what the social malaise was going on in the society. I'd been working very, very hard to come to my own healing, and I requested him for a day of his time. I thought, I needed a day to tell him all that was going on and so many things in our movement that were affected by it. It was very large implications. And I thought he'd want to know. So he said he couldn't give me a day, but he could give me an hour, and I took it. So I had 3 children, and my husband was working, but I needed to talk to him. So I drove 17 hours north by myself with my kids to go see him in Gitanagari. And when it was finally my turn to talk to him, we sat down under a tree there on the lawn, and I had brought a book with me about abuse, and I wanted to just read him the definition of it because I didn't want to get all mushy, and I didn't want to put all my feelings. I'm not the kind of person who falls apart and asks for help from people. I just don't do that. I deal with it myself and a few trusted people. And I certainly didn't want to put it on him, because I thought of him as like, he's too busy, he's got all these disciples, and he's not involved in these kind of horrible things. He's just absorbed in Krishna. And I didn't want to bother him. But I needed to tell him what was going on in the movement, what had happened to me, and that there was these anomalies, and I was seeing them, and we needed to do something about it. I was so passionate about that. So I read him the definition of this kind of abuse that I'd experienced. And I was trying to keep my cool and just keep it, business. I wasn't trying to do a whole sob session with him. And I only had an hour. And I completely lost it. I broke down. I started hyperventilating. I was so embarrassed. It took me like 3 whole minutes, which when you're sitting there in front of your spiritual master, you've been meditating on this for years, felt like an eternity. It took me about 3 solid minutes to compose myself again. And he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything at all. So when I finally came out and I told him that I wanted to write a book about what had happened, what's been going on in our movement, to my surprise, he the first thing that he said was, "But you don't have any proof." And I was really taken aback, like, what did he just say? So I was pretty shaken by that, but I just continued. I thought, okay, well, maybe somebody came to him before we talked and he thinks I'm crazy, or I don't know what. But I just continued the conversation and told him about what had happened with Bhavananda and what was going on and how we needed to do something about it. And he just, he said, "Did our Bhavananda Ji," he called him Bhavananda Ji, "abuse you?" So, I graphically described something he probably didn't want to hear. And then he proceeded to tell me that so many people come and tell him things from different points of view that he jokingly said, "I don't even know how Paramatma can make sense of all of it," like that. And he patted me on the head and said he loved me, but that if I were to come out with a book, that I would likely be criticized, ostracized, and that would be very painful for me and my husband and my children. And he said, "You clearly still need help. Continue with your therapy, and you can approach the legal authorities or, the ISKCON Child Protection Team if you need to. Do whatever you need to do." And then he gave me some other good advice and about how he does things long term, and that was it. That was the last time I ever talked to him. I went home that night and I realized that the person that I had just given 10 years of my life to, not only was he not there for me, he had just demonstrated that all of his sweet words over the last 10 years, when I really needed him, when I really put all my faith in him as the representative of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, that just wasn't true. So I really understand how people feel when they hear him being criticized and they say, "Oh, that's an offense, you're an offender, you're in Maya," right? I used to be exactly like that. I used to shut people down when they would say anything about him. In fact, we were part of the campaign that, started, "Don't click on the negative things about him online because they'll get ranked higher on Google." I was part of that. But now I realize there was a lot more to it. There was a lot more to it. You weren't allowed to know anything different. And it was like a whole cultivation of see no evil, speak no evil. And here I was living what my past, the evil of my past, and I was looking for shelter, and I got none. To this day, it's been years, and he's never reached out once. Not once. And it kind of hurts because I hear stories of him spending a whole day with my peers, sitting on a surfboard or walking, talking, joking. He has time for that. But he didn't have time to hear my experience. Didn't have time for me. After I came back from Gita Nagari, after that meeting with him, I was very, very conflicted over the whole thing. I didn't understand what had happened. I just knew I didn't feel right. Something was off and I couldn't put my finger on it. I felt like, am I crazy? Am I the offensive one here? What's wrong with this picture? And yet I had grown to really trust my own guidance from Super Soul inside, and Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada's lectures and like that. And it so happened one day, an older Guru Kuli who had been raised in New Vrindavan, she was in her mid-40s. I spent some time with her. She came to visit my house. It's somebody I'd never seen before. She was in pretty rough shape. And she wouldn't even accept food or water at my house. And anyways, we talked about her experiences in New Vrindavan, which were, yeah, they were very, very severe forms of abuse. And but she still had this look in her eye like she loved Krishna. She couldn't stop thinking about Krishna. And her third or fourth husband had said, why do you still want to be with those people? And she just cried and said, I still love Krishna. I can't stop loving Krishna. But when she was leaving, she came downstairs and she looked at my altar. And she saw a picture of Radhanath Swami on my altar. And with just totally deadpan blank expression, she said, he raped me. And I didn't know what to do with that. I just spent a few hours with her hearing her stories, and I didn't know what to believe. So I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And I took his picture down. I've never put it back up. Since then, there's been a lot more people who have told me things, and more things that I've learned. And it really breaks my heart. Anyways, we have Srila Prabhupada. We have Krishna in our hearts. And for me, that's more than enough. So after that meeting with that one Guru Kuli and my meeting with him, and I had taken his picture off my altar, I started clicking on the things that I wasn't supposed to click on. And I was really curious, like, what is all this? Here I was, giving my heart to someone who had just demonstrated that I was on my own, and whatever was going on in the movement was, he wasn't going to do anything about it. Good luck for you, but certainly he was too busy thinking about Krishna to do anything about child abuse and molesters, right? So I realized later that as late as the early 90s, he was still glorifying Kirtananda as a pure devotee and explaining the things that he had done in New Vrindavan as being, the activities of an advanced devotee who knew how to apply Krishna consciousness. And there's even some picture or some footage of him in Vrindavan paying full Dandavat obeisances at the Samadhi of Kirtananda, who by this time was well known to be a child molester, who had gotten a Samadhi in Vrindavan. And here he was, disregarding how many hundreds of Guru Kuli's experience with this man and offering him obeisances in the Holy Dham? Like, why? What is that? How is it that women and children can cry in silence, and this abuser is buried with full pomp and ceremony, and then continues to get respect from the foremost leader in our society, Radhanath Swami. Like, what is going on here? It just, the picture was getting really strange. Very, very strange indeed. And I started asking myself, what kind of fool am I? I've given my heart to this person, you know, to the fact, or I was telling him, you're my moral compass that I can live by your character and activities, right? I mean, I'm not a sentimental person, but I was really deeply feeling like that I was loved this person spiritually. And then after all of these things were shown and more, there's a lot more that came, I started asking myself, was that just seduction? Was that just flattery? And yeah, I didn't know what to think.